Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're going to be tackling a classic, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah, a classic.
It's pretty wild that this book is still, topping bestseller lists, even though it was published way back in the 1930s.
Yeah.
Why do you think a book about relationships from almost a century ago is still so popular today?
Well, I think human nature hasn't really changed that much.
Yeah.
We still crave connection and we need to feel validated. We want to influence people. And Carnegie really tapped into all of these things.
Yeah.
His principles, they're like this timeless roadmap to navigating, you know, the complexities of being a person, basically, and interacting with other people.
Totally, yeah. Okay, let's unpack this roadmap then.
Yeah.
Starting with part one,
Okay.
fundamental techniques in handling people.
All right.
And the first principle is don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Right.
Okay, easier said than done.
Yeah.
Is it realistic to, never criticize anyone?
Well, it's not really about never voicing disapproval.
Okay.
It's more about recognizing just how ineffective criticizing people is in actually creating real change. When we criticize someone, even if we think we're being, constructive, it often just triggers defensiveness in the other person.
Yeah.
And they feel attacked, and they're less likely to actually listen to what we're saying.
So, think about a time that you got, harshly criticized by someone.
Oh, yeah.
Did it make you suddenly have this epiphany and change your ways?
Not at all. No.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably shut down or got defensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carnegie uses this great example of Bob Hoover. He was this test pilot.
Okay.
And he almost died once because his mechanic made this mistake.
Oh, geez.
So, anyone would be furious, right?
Yeah.
But Hoover, he understood that yelling at this mechanic wasn't going to solve anything.
Right.
So instead of, blaming him, he approached the situation with empathy and understanding.
Yeah, it makes you think about, how we can all approach similar situations in our own lives, I know I've been quick to criticize in the past, but maybe instead we can all try to understand the other person's perspective and offer support instead of condemning them.
Yeah.
Right.
It's about choosing understanding over blame.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that actually leads perfectly into Carnegie's next principle,
Okay.
which is give an honest and sincere appreciation. So instead of focusing on what people do wrong, why not acknowledge their strengths and accomplishments?
Exactly.
So you're saying a little appreciation can go a long way.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about just how good it feels when someone genuinely recognizes, your efforts.
Yeah.
It's not about just showering people with empty praise.
Right.
But it's about noticing and acknowledging the good things that people do.
Carnegie actually suggests, try to think like Ralph Waldo Emerson, who believed that every person is superior to us in some way. And if we can approach our interactions with that mindset, we'll always find something to appreciate about the other person.
He's got a point, don't you think? Imagine if we all made that conscious effort to find something to appreciate about the people we interact with every day.
Yeah.
Even the people who drive us crazy.
Yeah, it would definitely make for, more positive interactions.
For sure.
And speaking of making things positive, the third principle in this section is to appeal to another person's interest.
Okay.
And Carnegie uses this fishing analogy here,
Okay.
which I think is really funny.
All right. I'm intrigued.
You wouldn't use cheesecake to catch a fish, would you?
Well, it depends on the fish.
Well, okay, true, but you'd probably use a worm because that's what the fish wants.
Right. Of course.
So instead of trying to force our interests on other people, we need to figure out what they find interesting.
Right. But how do we do that without seeming manipulative?
Well, it's not about being manipulative. It's about being understanding. So take Andrew Carnegie, for example. He wanted his nieces and nephews to write him back.
Mm-hmm.
But they never did, so he bet someone that he could get them to write without even, asking them directly.
How do you pull that off?
Well, he sent them letters, and he said he was enclosing $5,
Uh-huh.
but he forgot to put the money in.
Oh, that's devious.
Yeah, and naturally, they wrote back to him right away,
Of course.
asking about the missing money. It's
Yep.
a classic example of, appealing to their interest.
Yeah.
In this case, their desire for some cash.
That's hilarious. That's brilliant. Maybe a little sneaky.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it shows how understanding what motivates people can be so key to effective communication.
For sure. Yeah, it's all about really understanding the psychology behind motivation, So building on that idea, let's move on to part 2, 6 ways to make people like you.
Okay.
So these principles are all about, building genuine rapport with people
Yeah.
and making those crucial first impressions count.
Okay. So spill the secrets.
Yeah.
how do we become instantly likable?
Well, the first one might seem really obvious, but it's often overlooked. Become genuinely interested in other people.
Okay.
And Carnegie compares this to the enthusiasm of a dog.
Interesting.
What makes a dog so lovable, right?
Yeah.
It's their pure, unadulterated joy in seeing you.
Yeah, I guess I never thought about it that way, but it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, but how do we translate that, like, doggy enthusiasm to, like, human interactions?
Well, just think about what it feels like when someone you know genuinely wants to know more about you.
Yeah.
They ask about your life, your goals, even your problems,
Yeah.
and they actually listen to your responses, you know? It makes you feel seen and valued.
It's like that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when someone remembers something you told them like weeks ago, and you're like, wow, they actually cared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you come across an article or a resource that relates to something that they mentioned,
Yeah.
share it with them. These little gestures can go a long way in building a strong connection.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, what's next?
Ready for a simple yet powerful tip?
Hit me with it.
Smile.
Really?
Yeah, that's it.
It sounds so basic, right? But Carnegie really emphasizes the transformative power of a genuine smile.
I'm a bit skeptical. Can a smile really, like, change your life?
Well, Carnegie shares this anecdote about William B. Steinhardt. He was a stockbroker
Good.
who was known for being pretty grumpy.
Okay.
But he decided to experiment with just like smiling more at everyone he encountered.
Interesting.
The results were remarkable.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, his interactions just became smoother, complaints were easier to handle, even his business improved
What?
just from smiling more.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a simple smile can transform like your entire outlook
Yeah.
and the way people respond to you.
That's kind of wild.
Right. A smile is this like universal symbol of warmth and approachability.
Yeah,
It instantly disarms people and it creates a more positive atmosphere.
that makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
what's next? Give me something actionable.
Remember names.
I'm sure we've all been in that super awkward situation, you know, where we've forgotten someone's name like 5 seconds after meeting them.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm terrible with names. I always feel so embarrassed when I can't remember.
But think about how good it feels when someone does remember your name.
Yeah.
It makes you feel special and respected, like you actually matter to them.
Yeah.
Carnegie points out that our names are so deeply connected to our identity.
Yeah, it's like that warm feeling when someone uses your name in a conversation. You know,
Yeah,
you're like, oh, they see me.
exactly. And I know remembering names can be a struggle for a lot of us.
Yeah, it definitely is for me.
But there are techniques we can use to improve.
Okay, lay it on me.
So when you first hear someone's name, really focus on it,
Okay.
repeat it back to them, maybe even ask how it's spelled if it's unusual.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Right. It forces you to actually pay attention
Yeah.
instead of just letting it go in one ear and out the other.
Totally. And like use their name a couple of times during the conversation to like reinforce the memory and show that you're engaged.
Absolutely.
This is making me think about how often I'm guilty of like just waiting for my turn to talk, you know,
Yeah.
instead of actually listening to the other person,
Mm-hmm.
which brings us to Carnegie's next principle, right?
You got it. Be a good listener.
Okay.
And it's not just about hearing the words.
Right.
It's about being truly present and engaged in the conversation.
Yeah.
Carnegie actually claimed that he became known as a great conversationalist simply by being a good listener.
Really. Just by listening.
It shows just how powerful it is to actually pay attention to what the other person is saying, you know?
Yep.
It makes them feel heard and understood, which is incredibly validating.
It makes you wonder how many misunderstandings and conflicts could be avoided if we all just took the time to actually listen to each other.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the next principle really builds on this idea of understanding the other person's perspective.
Let me guess. Talk in terms of the other person's interest.
Bingo. It all comes back to that fishing analogy.
Yeah.
We need to bait the hook with what interests them, not just what interests us.
Okay, but how do we figure out what interests them without seeming like we're like interrogating them?
Well, it's about being observant and asking thoughtful questions.
Okay.
Carnegie even suggests doing a little research beforehand if you can.
Oh, interesting.
Learn about their background, their hobbies, their profession.
So like if you're meeting a potential client, you might like take a look at their company's website or LinkedIn profile.
Exactly. It shows that you're taking the time to understand their world. And once you have a sense of their interests, try to steer the conversation in that direction.
Yeah, it's all about finding that common ground and building rapport. I'm starting to see how all of these principles are so interconnected, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They build upon each other to create like this framework for genuine positive interaction.
Precisely. And this final principle in this section really sums it all up.
Make the other person feel important.
You nailed it. It's the culmination of all the previous principles.
Yeah.
When we show genuine interest, listen attentively, remember names, and talk about what matters to them,
Right.
we're essentially communicating this powerful message.
Right.
You are important to me.
Right. It's about recognizing the inherent value in every single person
Yeah.
and making them feel seen, heard, and appreciated.
Exactly.
Wow, this deep dive is really making me reconsider how I approach my everyday interactions.
Yeah.
I have a feeling this next section is going to be just as thought-provoking.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Are you ready to tackle part 3?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so this section is called 12 Ways to Win People to Your Way of Thinking. And it delves into the art of persuasion.
Oh.
Persuasion, I think, sometimes has kind of a negative connotation, like we're trying to manipulate or trick people into doing what we want.
Yeah, I get that.
But I think Carnegie is emphasizing ethical persuasion here.
Right.
It's not about coercion. It's about finding common ground
Yeah.
and presenting your ideas in a way that, resonates with the other person.
Right. It's about connecting with them.
Exactly. Okay, so how do we persuade ethically? Give me the first principle.
Okay, so the first principle might surprise you. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it.
Wait, so we should just avoid conflict altogether?
Well,
Isn't disagreement like a natural part of life?
oh yeah, disagreement is inevitable.
Yeah.
But Carnegie is cautioning us against engaging in these heated arguments.
Mm-hmm.
When emotions are running high, logic tends to fly out the window,
Yeah.
And arguments often lead to resentment.
Right.
And no one really feels good afterward.
It makes you think about all those times when you've gotten into a heated debate and walked away feeling frustrated and unheard.
Oh yeah.
Even if you technically won the argument, did you really achieve anything?
Not really.
Right, so instead of trying to win the argument,
Yeah.
maybe we should focus on understanding the other person's perspective and finding a solution that works for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
So if we're not supposed to argue, how do we approach disagreements?
Yeah, well, Carnegie outlines several principles for handling disagreements effectively.
Okay.
The first one is begin in a friendly way.
Okay.
Approaching a disagreement with hostility is only going to escalate the situation.
Yeah.
It's like disarming someone with kindness.
Totally.
Carnegie uses this example of a tenant who needed to negotiate with this really difficult landlord.
Okay.
But instead of starting with complaints, he expressed appreciation for the house and the landlord's management.
Oh,
And this friendly approach made the landlord much more receptive to his requests.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like setting a positive tone for the conversation right from the start.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the next principle?
Okay, so this one can be tough.
All right.
Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say, you're wrong,
Yeah, that's a tough one.
especially when we feel strongly about our own viewpoint, right?
Oh, yeah, no one likes to be told that they're wrong.
Right.
Immediately puts you on the defensive.
Yeah, and Carnegie points out that we as humans are often irrationally attached to our opinions, even when we're presented with clear evidence to the contrary.
Yeah.
Like he tells this funny story about how he once overpaid for some curtains. And when a friend pointed out that he got ripped off, he argued and defended his purchase.
Okay.
But then later, when another friend admired the curtains, he readily admitted that he paid too much.
So, our reactions are influenced by how people approach us.
Exactly.
Like, if someone's aggressive or judgmental, we're more likely to just, dig in our heels.
Yeah.
But if someone expresses their opinion respectfully, we're much more open to hearing them out.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next principle,
Okay.
which requires a good deal of humility.
Oh, boy.
If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
I mean, this one seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's easier said than done.
Oh, for sure.
Admitting you're wrong can be tough on the ego.
Yeah. It can be, but Carnegie argues that owning up to our mistakes can actually work in our favor.
Okay.
He shares an anecdote about getting caught walking his dog without a leash twice.
Oh, man.
And the second time before the officer could even say anything, Carnegie admitted his wrongdoing and apologized profusely.
What happened?
The officer let him off with a warning.
Wow. Oh.
Sometimes admitting our mistakes can disarm the other person and lead to a more favorable outcome than we might expect.
Totally. It's like you're diffusing the situation before it has a chance to escalate.
Exactly.
Okay, what's next on the list?
Let the other person do a great deal of the talking.
Okay.
This principle is all about the power of listening.
Okay, this reminds me of like the be a good listener principle we
Yeah,
talked about before.
definitely related.
Yeah.
But here, the emphasis is on letting the other person express themselves fully
Yeah.
without interruption.
Hmm.
When we allow someone to talk freely, it makes them feel heard and understood.
It gives us a chance to actually understand their perspective and motivations.
Exactly, which brings us to another related principle.
Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view.
You got it.
Okay.
It's about, putting ourselves in their shoes,
Yeah.
understanding their experiences, and considering how those experiences have shaped their opinions.
It's about empathy. You know, recognizing that everyone has their own unique story.
Exactly. And when we make an effort to understand where someone is coming from, it's so much easier to find common ground.
This reminds me of that famous quote, walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
Yeah, it's a powerful image.
Yeah.
Now, the next principle builds on this idea of understanding and empathy.
Be sympathetic to the other person's ideas and desires.
You're on a roll. When we show genuine sympathy and understanding, we create this connection with the other person.
Yeah.
They feel like we're on their side.
Like building a bridge of understanding.
Exactly. Okay, what's next on Carnegie's list of persuasion principles?
Lay it on me.
All right, so this one is particularly clever. Begin with questions to which the other person will answer yes.
Okay.
So this technique is often used by salespeople and negotiators.
Mm-hmm.
By getting someone to agree with you on a series of smaller points, you can gradually lead them towards your desired outcome.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's all about creating that sense of momentum and agreement.
But we have to be careful not to make it feel like a manipulation tactic.
Right,
It needs to be like a genuine conversation,
right.
not like a series of leading questions designed to trap the other person.
For sure, the key is authenticity.
Okay.
Now, here's another powerful principle.
Okay.
Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah,
People are much more likely to embrace an idea if they feel like they came up with it themselves.
absolutely. It gives them a sense of ownership and pride.
Totally.
It's about empowering the other person and making them feel like they're part of the solution.
Okay, what's next?
All right, principle number 10, appeal to the nobler motives. So this is about framing your request or proposal in a way that aligns with the other person's values and principles.
So instead of focusing on like the purely practical benefits of an idea,
Yeah.
you might highlight its positive impact on the community or the environment.
Exactly. It's about appealing to their sense of purpose,
Right.
making them feel good about supporting your idea.
I like that.
It's a win-win.
It is. Okay, we're down to the last two. What's next?
Okay, so this one's fun. Dramatize your ideas.
Okay.
Now, this isn't about being theatrical,
Okay.
but it's about finding ways to make your message more memorable and impactful.
So instead of just stating the facts, you might use a story or a vivid example to illustrate your point.
Exactly. Carnegie uses this example of a cash register salesman who wanted to convince a store owner to upgrade his equipment.
Okay.
So instead of just talking about the features of the new cash register,
Yeah.
he threw a handful of pennies on the floor to demonstrate how much money the store was losing because of their slow checkout lines.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it makes a much stronger impression.
Way more memorable.
Right. It's about bringing your ideas to life
Yeah.
and engaging the other person's imagination.
I love that.
Okay, and finally, we have principle number 12.
Okay, hit me.
Throw down a challenge.
Ooh. I like this one.
Yeah.
It's about appealing to people's competitive spirit and their desire to achieve.
Exactly. Carnegie argues that a challenge can be a really powerful motivator.
Yeah.
When we present someone with a challenge, it can ignite their ambition and inspire them to rise to the occasion.
I love it. So wrapping up part 3, it seems like the key to effective persuasion isn't about like manipulation or trickery,
Right.
but it's about respect,
Yeah.
understanding,
Oh.
and finding common ground.
Well said.
You know, it's about connecting with the other person on a human level
Yeah.
and presenting our ideas in a way that resonates with their values and aspirations.
Absolutely.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
Carnegie's principles are so timeless and relevant,
Yeah.
you know, even though it was written almost a century ago.
Yeah.
It feels like it could have been written today.
It really does. It speaks to the enduring power of human nature
Yeah.
and how important it is to understand the psychology of influence.
So as we wrap up our exploration of how to win friends and influence people,
Okay.
what's one principle that resonated with you the most? And how might you apply it in your own life?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's the emphasis on avoiding arguments
Yeah.
and approaching disagreements with empathy and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really going to make a conscious effort to listen more intently
Yeah.
and truly try to see things from the other person's perspective.
That's a great takeaway. I think I'm going to focus on give honest and sincere appreciation.
Yeah.
I want to make a conscious effort to acknowledge the good things that people do, both big and small.
I love that. And remember, these principles are like muscles. The
Okay.
more we use them, the stronger they become.
Totally. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of human connection and influence.
Yeah, this was great.